You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome to the Catholic Mama, where you'll learn how to deepen and defend your faith, find comfort as we share the vocation of parenthood, and learn how to raise your children confidently Catholic. I'm your host, Christine Mooney Flynn. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Catholic Mama podcast. I'm your host, Christine Mooney Flynn, and thanks for joining me as we discuss the Sacred Heart, the devotions to the Sacred Heart, as well as an enthronement to the Sacred Heart, which you may or may not be familiar with. I wasn't until recently, and I was so blessed to be able to get a priest over to our house to enthrone our entire home to the Sacred Heart, and I want to tell you a little bit about that as well. So first off, I think it's summer officially now. Everything's been blurring together, hasn't it? I don't know what's going on, but I'm pretty sure it's summer. And so happy summer if you are in, I guess, the northern hemisphere. If you're not, then happy winter to you folks in the southern part of the world. That doesn't sound great either, but now that we are 6 months away from a Wisconsin winter, I'm happy to be 6 months away from winter. Although I'll be honest, when we told people we were moving to Wisconsin from Pennsylvania, like, oh my goodness, you're going to have horrible winters, just you wait. And it was a winter. It wasn't anything that was that much different than what I had experienced for the past 9 years in Philadelphia. And certainly, I mean, it's a trade-off. I grew up in North Carolina, and you'd have mild winters, but then it was so hot and humid in the summertime that you couldn't go outside anyway. So it was basically like winter, you know? So it really wasn't that bad. But I'm enjoying summer and the fact that my children are outside playing in a sprinkler right now. Actually, I have most of my children. One of mine, my 8-month-old, as of yesterday, is strapped to my chest in the baby sling because she has been teething. She's getting both of her front teeth in, the top front teeth. She's got the 2 bottom ones in already. And I don't remember any of my other children being this plagued by pain and suffering. And I told the Lord, I was like, I'll take her suffering. I'll suffer. Let her go free from this. And so far, no, but I've still been suffering because she's suffering. And the only place that she is happy currently is in the baby sling, which she has quite legitimately been in for 8 hours every day for the last 4 or 5 days. It's been rough. My back is a little tired. And I would say, if anybody's saying, oh, well, you should have your husband. Doesn't he work at home, wear the baby? No. She wants nothing to do with anybody but me. And she usually is a love bug to everybody else in the family. But alas, it is just me and her, buddies forever, apparently, until these teeth come in. So everybody's outside enjoying the summer, and I hope you are too. Halfway through the week, if I actually get this post up or this podcast published on time today, it's hump day, halfway through the week. Okay, and we're about, what is it? It's June 24th, and the entire month of June is dedicated to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Just as, October is for the Rosary, May is for dedicated to Mary, March is to Saint Joseph. Now, that's all great, and I love that there is this intensified focus on various saints or aspects of our faith life at certain times of the year. It helps rather than it just, it helps to ground us a little bit more rather than the days just blurring together and flowing by, as any parent will tell you it seems to happen all the time, that the days are long, right? But the years are short, and that goes for each year. Suddenly I'm like, oh, I meant to do that. And then again, in May, I meant to do a May crowning. I was going to do it the first weekend in May, but then it was rainy, and then we never got around to it, and we finally did a May crowning on May 31st. So I know I'm not alone in any of this. You think you're going to get something done, and you don't. So it is, less than a week left in the month of the Sacred Heart. If you want to do something for the Sacred Heart, you can still do it. Even if you are past June when you finally get around to it. It doesn't matter. Now, like I said, it's nice that the church does this, where we have these dedicated, intensified faith or dedications, I guess. If maybe I'm blending my words. These intensified devotions, that's what I'm trying to look for. During certain times of the year. But just because I'm putting this up in June, and June is the month of the Sacred Heart, does not mean that
you have to do this in June. You can do it any time of the year. Anytime you can have a priest come over if he has some time to come over to your house to do the enthronement. You can do it. I will also say, too, before we get into it too much, and I'm sure you're not living in under a rock, and you know that it seems like the world has gone clown suddenly and pretty viciously. Just like things just swapped. The revolution that certain nefarious groups have been pushing for over the past several decades seems to be rearing its ugly head suddenly. And which includes the destruction of certain statues, and including Catholic statues of Catholic saints, the calling of destruction of Catholic churches and protests in front of churches in general because we depict Christ as having fair skin in some of the iconic icons. And it looks too European, and that's not right apparently to these people. Which I mean, you can never do enough for them. These crazies, they just are never satisfied. So, in light of all of that, in light of the sins that I really don't feel like many of them quite understand what they're doing. Just as Jesus said, "Forgive them; they know not what they do." How is it that you could know Jesus and know God and still want to destroy images of him or his Blessed Mother or the saints who have lived their lives for God and have been a living example of God's love in the real world here? If you knew that, you wouldn't want to destroy any of that. So I firmly believe that for many, not all, I think that some of them are fully aware of what they're doing, but I think for many of them, they're what I think my husband was talking on our anti-socialism podcast on the last episode. These are useful idiots. A lot of these people are just whooped up in a hysterical, emotional frenzy and swept away by these calls to violent action. And I just don't think they know what they're doing. So if you would like, I don't know when you're listening to this. If you listen to this before Friday the 26th, we'll jump in from the very beginning. If you can't do the full 9 days with me live, and I'll explain what I'm talking about in a second, please jump in anytime. But I've decided from Friday, June 26th to Saturday, July 4th at 11 a.m. Eastern, every one of those days, I will be praying a novena to the Sacred Heart of Jesus in reparation for the destruction of these sacred icons and the call, whether it's happened or it's just that the people who have been calling for the desecration of these icons. So if you'd like to join me, I would love for you to do that. I'm going to be doing it live on Instagram Live every day from this Friday the 26th to Saturday the 4th at 11 a.m. Eastern. It only takes 10 minutes or less. It's a pretty short novena. So please join me, share with your friends, let them know. You can go to my Instagram, thecatholicmama.com. I put a post up today about all of this. So please share, tag a friend that you think might be interested in doing this. Set a reminder on your phone and join me as we make reparations for the sins of these certain people who are calling for, it's not just the statues that they want to desecrate, right? It's our faith. They want to get rid of this. They think that it's a hindrance to the progress of man, which is a lot of BS, to be honest. And I'll tell you this because I used to be one of these people. Not necessarily. I don't think I ever destroyed anything, but I had this very radical mindset, and it's dangerous. And whooped up with your friends, you will do some very stupid things. So I do not put it past any of these people to continue to desecrate and destroy sacred icons of our faith. And again, it's just that icon that they want to destroy is an icon of what they really want to destroy, which is they want to take away our religion. They really, really do. I used to think that I would be helping people if I helped them get rid of their Christian beliefs. I thought it was a hindrance to them. So, don't be like how I used to be. Don't be fooled by the people that are just like I used to be. I can tell you from firsthand experience how very dangerous this line of thinking is. Okay. I'll put a link also to my Instagram in the podcast show notes for this episode so that you can find me there if you don't follow me there already. And by the way, I did get somebody wrote in and asked, they just started listening to the show and they would love to know more about my conversion stories. My husband and I have documented, I'm sure if anybody's been listening long enough, we've documented our conversion stories so many times, and I'm so glad that, thank you so much for the person who submitted that question and for listening now to the Catholic Mama podcast. If you would like, just go all the way back to episode 1. And, that episode was recorded and put up and shortly after my my baptism in the Catholic faith. Actually, in any Christian, I was baptized Catholic, but I was never, I was nothing before that. So that was my baptism, and then my confirmation came about a year afterwards. But just go even back to episode 1, and then any episode that has anything to do with New Age stuff that chronicles some of my conversion as well. So thank you so much for that question. But I would start with episode 1. Go all the way back, 100 and some episodes, and you'll find it. Okay, so back, 1673 to 1675. Let's start way, way back when. Where the Sacred Heart comes from, where this devotion comes from. Now, the feast day every year is, I don't know if it's always set for no, it's not always set for June 19th. This year is June 19th, but I believe it's the third Friday of the month in June, right? Third Friday, yeah, the third Friday. And then the following Saturday, the third Saturday, is the feast day of the Sacred, or the Immaculate Heart of Mary as well. Those go in tandem. So this all started back in 1673 when our Lord appeared to Saint Margaret Mary, to Margaret Alacoque, if I can say that correctly. You'd think I took so many years of French I'd be able to say that, but I'm having a hard time today. All the sleep that I'm missing with a teething baby. Okay, so Jesus appeared. He inspired her with these 12 promises to those who not only dedicate themselves to Jesus, but the love that comes through his Sacred Heart, right? So, there's a beautiful mystery in the fact that Jesus loved us with a human heart, but it's also a divine heart, that divine love through a human heart. And that's it's a unique, completely unique thing. No, that's not ever happened in the rest of the history of humankind. And so it's a special devotion and love that we can have for that Sacred Heart, and the graces that come back to us for that love, the dedication of the devotion of ourselves to that, the enthronement of our entire home and family to that Sacred Heart. It's a very special thing. So Jesus, when he appeared to St. Margaret Mary back in the 17th century, gave her 12 promises. And I'm going to read those now. So the first promise for those who devote themselves to the Sacred Heart of Jesus is, I will give them all the graces necessary in their state of life. That sounds pretty good, right? Number 2 is good too. I will establish peace in their homes. Number 3, I will comfort them in all their afflictions. Number 4, I will be their secure refuge during life and above all in death. I will bestow abundant blessings upon all their undertakings. That's number 5. Promise 6, sinners will find in my heart the source and infinite ocean of mercy. Lukewarm souls shall become fervent is the promise of number 7. Fervent souls shall quickly mount to high perfection. I will bless every place in which an image of my heart is exposed and honored. I will give priests the gift of touching the most hardened hearts. Promise 11 is, those who shall promote this devotion shall have their names written in my heart. And number 12, I promise you in the excessive mercy of my heart that my all-powerful love will grant to all those who receive Holy Communion on the first Fridays in 9 consecutive months the grace of final perseverance. They shall not die in my disgrace, nor without receiving their sacraments. My divine heart shall be their safe refuge in this last moment. So if you ever hear about the devotion to the Sacred Heart, that usually comes along with that last promise, that you have to go to Mass on the first Fridays of 9 consecutive months. And also, you have to receive Holy Communion, which means you have to be in a state of grace. You would have had to go to confession within 8 days before or after. I believe preferably before that first Friday. But if you think about that promise, it's so smart. If you get to daily Mass every month on the first Friday, and you receive Holy Communion, and you've gone to confession every single month for 9 months, wow, of course you're going to be in a holier place. It's such a smart, of course it's smart, it's God, but it's such an intelligent way of drawing people to the faith and helping them grow in holiness. And it might seem arbitrary, go to Mass that seems so arbitrary, 9 times, but it's not. Wow, what a great way to get a habit going. You've already gone for 9 months. Why not keep going? Why not keep going to confession? You've already been doing this for 9 months. Let's keep going. It's such an intelligent way, a subtle way to help us increase in holiness from there on out, right? Because it's not like you just do the 9 consecutive first Fridays and then you go back to the way you used to be, right? It's the same thing when we go through Lent. You don't just give up something at the beginning of Lent so that you can revert back to whatever the sin was that you gave up before Lent began. You go one rung higher on the ladder to heaven, right? So those are the promises. I mean, what amazing promises, right? You devote yourself to the Sacred Heart and you share that devotion with others. Whoa, you go to Mass for the first Fridays, you have Holy Communion, you go to confession. It seems like, what a way to, because not only, we got to remember, whenever we devote ourselves to Jesus, it isn't a one-way, conversation. This is a two-way communication where every small amount that we can give of ourselves, our time, our devotion, our love to God, we get the graces back 100-fold. Right? God is abundant in his graces back to us. So we give to him, we devote ourselves to him. Wow, what comes back? Now I will say, because it does mention promise number 9, I will bless every place in which an image of my heart is exposed and honored. I spent a long time looking for just the right images, and I decided to get one of the Immaculate Heart of Mary as well as the Sacred Heart of Jesus and put them up at the same time. So when we did the enthronement, our priest friend blessed both of those images in our home. I personally found it difficult to find a Sacred Heart image that really spoke to me. And I've been looking for months, which is one of the reasons that I put off this enthronement, because I wanted to find, of course I could do a temporary one and do a different image when I found one that I felt more of an emotional connection to, but I wanted to get it right, from the get-go. It's more special that way, I think. So it took me a while, but I finally found one off Amazon of all places. I was trying. If you are a Catholic creative who has a business with art and you have what you feel is a beautiful image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus, let me know. And I would love to buy that image and put it up in my home, because I'm trying to make my house look as Catholic as possible. So I am buying from Catholic small business owners left and right lately. But when it came to this image, I was just struggling so much. And I saw so many beautiful ones, but they'd be out of stock, or they weren't big enough, or whatever. So let me know, because I'll put it up somewhere else in my house. I have a prayer, kind of a saint wall that I want to do in my upstairs hallway. So there's plenty of wall space. Let me know if you have a beautiful image of the Sacred Heart or Immaculate Heart. And I'll share it with others too. I love to help small business owners. My husband and I are small business owners, so I totally get it. Okay, but also on that point, you can have, it doesn't have to be the full, it's preferred if it is the traditional picture of Jesus with the Sacred Heart. So you see Jesus and the Sacred Heart is in his chest. You can, though, you are permitted to have sacred or immaculate hearts, like more of an abstract version of it. It doesn't have to be like an image of Jesus or Mary as well to make it efficacious. It still works even if it is more abstract or just the heart itself, which I thought that would be that was an interesting point. So if you find one that is more abstract and you love it, that's totally cool. That's although the church will say it's preferred if you do have the image of Jesus as well as his heart there, which I think that makes sense. I think that's fair. But man, as husbands, wives, mothers, fathers, children of if you have difficult parents or a difficult family life, if you're in a different, your state of life, there's difficulties there. You need peace in your home, whether you have a toddler or a teenager. You suffer from physical ailments, spiritual doubt, emotional or mental health issues. Everything these promises will help, and they help throughout life, and then most especially at the moment of death and beyond. This is a devotion for life. It is for every stage of life. It's for every person, from the child to the 90-some-year-old. So I love each of these promises. And as our father was reciting these in his homily on the Solemn Feast Day of the Sacred Heart, I felt so moved, and I was so excited that after that we'd be going home, preparing a lunch and getting ready to host another priest of the church to come over to do our enthronement ceremony. So, what is an enthronement ceremony? I will also put a link to all of the information that I used because the priest, when I emailed one of our parish priests, I said, would you mind anytime? It could be this month, it would be great since it's the Sacred Heart of Jesus month. But anytime is going to be fine. Whatever works for you. And she said, hey, you know what? I actually have time around lunch on the feast day of the Sacred Heart. Would you like me to come over then? I said, oh, you bet I would. That's the ultimate. That's so exciting. But he had never, the priest hadn't really heard of this enthronement ceremony before. So I sent him over a couple of links that I had found, which included both the Latin and English translations of the ceremony. And he put it together in a nice little PDF for me to print out. And he came over with his stole and had did the blessings, blessed. It was really nice. And we had lunch and wine and stayed for a couple of hours and talked a bunch. And it was just this really wonderful way to elevate our family to a position of being enthroned in the Sacred Heart of Jesus, and also, getting to know our parish priest, which was pretty awesome. Okay. So, back to this. What is an enthronement? The enthronement actually didn't start. This whole enthronement ceremony did not kickstart at the same time as Margaret Mary's unveiling of the 12 promises of the devotion of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. This happened actually in the 1900s, early 1900s, when a priest began to really carry out the work of spreading the devotion. Now, of course, the Sacred Heart of Jesus devotion was pretty strong and growing anyway at that point, but this enthronement was something new back about 100 years or so. And it was actually Father Matteo Crawley Bovi, I believe is how you pronounce his last name. And, he believed that in order to win souls for Christ and to change the world, it really started with the evangelization of the family, of the home, right? The home, the family, that's the domestic church. Of course it starts here. That's the first school of our children. It's where we buoy up our strength to go out into the world and evangelize outwardly. We have to be in a safe, loving place at home to make that happen. So the enthronement ceremony was actually approved shortly after Father Matteo started this in 1907. It was approved by Pope St. Pius X in 1908, so very quickly. And since then, this apostolate has grown. I mean, I mentioned that we were doing an enthronement to a couple of people in the week leading up to the ceremony, and like, oh yeah, I did that last year. Oh, yeah, I've done that twice. Oh yeah, I got a priest coming over this week. So it's actually more common than I had known, because I never even heard about it. So I encourage you, if you have not done it, to do it. And you could always renew your vows, your consecration. I'm sorry, your enthronement vows. So this is actually. And also maybe it became more popular too, because I believe when Pope Francis came to Philadelphia in 2015, he promoted it as well as a good way for families to prepare and devote and increase in holiness in their own homes, because that was the World Meeting of Families, which is so funny. I was not Catholic in 2015, but I lived outside of Philly. And when my husband and I found out that the Pope was coming to Philadelphia, like, whoa, we should just get out of the whole area. We don't want to be around any of those crazies. I'm so sad we missed it. I would have been there. I would have been outside waiting in line for ages. Okay, so the Sacred Heart of Jesus enthronement ceremony itself is pretty simple. It helps to grow all the 12 promises of the Sacred Heart of Jesus anyway. It just helps those to blossom even more in the home. So here's what you need to do. First off, make sure that you are dedicated to doing the first Fridays. It's not necessary per se, but it is. I mean, for the enthronement, it's not necessary, but to really devote yourself to the Sacred Heart of Jesus, it is necessary. You have to go to the First Friday's Mass. You have to devote yourself to the Sacred Heart of Jesus. You need to go to confession. You need to receive Holy Communion. So just do that. On the day of the enthronement, go to Mass. If it's daily Mass, most likely, go to Mass, receive Holy Communion, and go there with the intentions of the family's enthronement that day as well. Secondly, make sure you have a priest. You don't necessarily need a priest for this. You can have the father of the house take over the role of the priest, but there's certain things that he won't be able to do. But it should be the head of the household. The father should lead it if a priest can't be there. And in the links that I will share as well, there is There's instructions on what to do if it's just the father who's leading it and you're not able to get a priest to the house. But invite your priest. I'm sure they would love to come over. And, for us in raising children who we hope will consider religious life as they get older, it is so important for them to see, a priest or a religious sister up close. These are real people that are warm and loving, and they want to serve God with their whole hearts and minds and bodies. So, wow, what a great way to have a priest, just to bring that religious idea, that life to life in your own home. Have a priest come over and feed them lunch. A friend of mine was saying that for her enthronement, her priest was from the Philippines, and she cooked him a Filipino meal afterwards, and it was great. So it was just a fun. It sounds like a very fun thing to do. Now you also need to have an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus. Again, I spent months and months looking for mine. I ordered different ones, kept them. I still have them. I'll order more. If you have any ideas of other ones you love, let me know, like I said. But I got an image of the Sacred Heart of Jesus that I really loved, an image of the Immaculate Heart of Mary. I have them both framed, and they were ready with holy water. We had holy water anyway. I also I looked online just for some Google image ideas on what to do for an enthronement altar. And I wanted to make sure that it was in a good spot in our house, that people would come by and see it regularly, that we could look at it as a family. Pat and I have talked about, my husband and I have talked about in previous episodes about silent evangelization, and having your home look Catholic when people come in is one way to do that. So I wanted to make sure that, especially for the Sacred Heart of Jesus and the Immaculate Heart of Mary, that was noticeable in our home. And I could not figure it out. I kept, I had these images framed up about a week and a half prior to our enthronement, and I was going around the house testing out, no, it doesn't look here. So finally, I said, Mary, Blessed Mother, please help me find a spot to put all this. And I even bought I've seen some really cool corner shelves that you can put right in the where the two walls in a room join. And I've seen some corner shrines. That's pretty cool. So I got that. But as I started to look at the corner shelf on the wall, I said, that's not it. I said, Mary, please help me. And bam, she showed me exactly where it needed to be in our home. And it's perfect. It's perfect. I got a nice lace, what's the word for it? It's not a doily. I'm blanking. But it's not a sleeve. Whoever's listening, somebody's listening to this podcast and shouting at the radio right now, it's called this. I can't remember it. But anyway, so I put some a lace, little fabric thing, white lace. For the day of, I went and got red roses and white hydrangeas and some little greenery in a vase. I have it just fits so well. I will share a picture of that as well in the show notes. So we prepared the altar, we had the images. And then we invited the priest over. He came over a little bit before lunchtime. He had printed out the order of the ceremony, and he had a copy for each of us. There was a long prayer that we had to all recite together. We had holy water on hand that he used. It was maybe 10 minutes max of the ceremony itself, but it was so beautiful. Even with a teething baby, and the kids were hungry and a little bouncy around and excited that we had somebody new in the house, but it was still so meaningful. And I think that's one of the things that I still am in awe about when it comes to the traditions of the Catholic faith. So back when I was, a spiritual but not religious person, I tried desperately to infuse my life with some kind of meaning. And that could have been with, crystals or, weird, I was trying so hard to use the things that God made to make me understand and love God himself, even though at the time I would have called it the universe that I was trying to do something with. It's so amazing that this little simple ceremony that just required a priest, some holy water, some beautiful pictures, and a nice lunch afterwards, and some flowers, imparted so much meaning into our lives so far. And even if I can't say, I saw flashes of light and I can really feel the graces flowing at the moment. That's not the point. But I will say, every time that my husband and I do something that God has promised graces in return, there is a difference. And it is a compounding. I mean, it's like when interest just like compounds and compounds. Every time we do it, it becomes greater and greater, and the home feels more peaceful. It feels like the veil between this world and the next thins a little bit more. So we still argue, and we still get frustrated, and I certainly still have my things that I need to bring to confession every time I go. But every time we do something like this, and even with this ceremony, I got to tell you, it was like I said, 5-10 minute thing, a really nice lunch afterwards. And I just felt such joy for several days after that. And it was really noticeable and meaningful. So if you are able to do this, I really, really recommend it. And I mean, after being holed up on our own for months on end and the craziness of the world, don't we want to devote our families and our homes even more to the Sacred Heart of Jesus? And wouldn't it be nice to make our priests know that we love them and care for them and want to include them and all the wonderful things that they're able to do into our lives? I mean, we help the priests, they help us, and we help each other. And it's a really beautiful thing. So, again, it's not a long ceremony. It doesn't take but maybe 5-10 minutes. And it was just wonderful. So I will share pictures of the altar that I created. It's right in our dining room, and I'm so grateful that I prayed to Mary, because I could not figure out a good spot to put it, and this is the best spot to put it. I'm so happy. I showed a picture to my mom, and she said it looks like something her grandmother from Austria would have had. A very old world. I was like, oh, okay, I like that. that I can deal with. It looks just very comforting to me, I think. So maybe you'll think the same when you see it too. I hope that this has inspired you to learn more or do something about this Sacred Heart enthronement. Again, if you would like to join me for the Novena that I will be doing in reparation for the destruction and desecration of the sacred icons that the crazy liberalists, leftists, nutsos out there, I don't know the better word, clowns, I don't know, it's crazy, are doing to our sacred icons, those of our faith. Please join me, June 26th to July 4th, 11 a.m. Eastern on Instagram Live. Again, I'll put a link to my Instagram profile as well in the show notes. And if you haven't already, I've gotten so much good feedback on our last podcast episode that we did on why Catholics should stand against socialism. If you haven't listened to that, listen to it. And if you hate communism, leave a 5-star review for the podcast. And make sure, if you've already left a review, thank you very much. I really appreciate that. Share the podcast then with somebody else, because goodness, we need to know the truth about socialism and why every Catholic in good faith needs to reject it wholesale. All right, everyone, thank you so much for listening, and until next time.
Don't forget to head over to thecatholicmama.com to get your free copy of How to Talk to Your Kids About God. This handy little ebook will teach you how to broach the topic of God with your children, or how to respond to your kids when they want to talk about God, as well as give you answers to 7 of the trickiest questions about the faith that Christian parents face. You'll love the easy-to-understand grown-up answers, the pared-down but not talked-down answers you can share with your kids, plus recommended resources if you'd like to deepen your understanding of the topic. Get yours free at thecatholicmama.com.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
Thank you for listening to a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up when knowledge takes flight.